When I saw the images and footage of the recent independence march in Poland last weekend, I felt a wave of disappointment and despair crash over me. I felt immensely let down and dejected by what I was viewing. Because seeing tens of thousands of people marching through their streets, unashamedly waving their flag and singing national songs, only drove home the depressing truth that my country, Britain, and her people have seemingly decided to give up. The likelihood of ever seeing something similar on the streets of London is almost nil. You see, we're too ashamed to stand up for our nation's best interests, too scared and guilt-tripped by our media. Poland, on the other hand, is an example of where Europe should be. The Polish people actually have a spine. And they won't be silenced or threatened into giving up the things they value the most, their culture, traditions, and identity. However, this attitude creates enemies, and this year's march is now the subject of a coordinated international media attack that is trying to denigrate not only the Polish people, but the concept of national pride altogether. The media reaction to this year's march has been nothing short of disgraceful. Of course, by now we wouldn't expect anything less, but the pure maliciousness of the headlines and accusations from almost every left-leaning news outlet you can think of stinks. Here's some headlines for you. Fascists march in Warsaw for Polish Independence Day in one of world's biggest far-right gatherings. 60,000 join far-right march on Poland's Independence Day. Tens of thousands join Polish white supremacist march. Europe must be white. Pray for an Islamic Holocaust. Tens of thousands from Europe's far-right march in Poland. Nationalist protesters disrupt Poland Independence Day events. Yes, the media was certainly out in force. Now this march is an annual event, but I don't know, I can't recall such a huge media reaction to last year's. Maybe we should look at what has happened in the world over the past 12 months to try and understand this reaction. 1. Trump became president. 2. Islamic terrorist attacks in Europe increased dramatically. 3. Geert Wilders came second in the Netherlands election. 4. Marine Le Pen won a third of the French vote. 5. The AfD in Germany grew significantly. 6. Sebastian Kurz won the Austrian election. 7. Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic and Slovakia stood up to the European Union over migrant quotas. 8. Trump visited Poland. 9. The EU continues to threaten Poland with sanctions and says they will take the country's voting rights away from them if they still refuse to open their borders to migrants. Well, quite a year, eh? Admittedly, if I was a leftist at The Guardian, I think I'd be struggling to get to sleep at night. The tide is turning, everyone can sense it, but the media, now a whimpering wounded animal, simply has no choice but to lash out and attack. The Independence March was the perfect opportunity. Before we look at some of these articles in more detail, let's educate ourselves on the meaning of a word. Just one word. Nationalist. Nationalist. A person who advocates political independence for a country. The desire of a group of people within a country for political independence. By that definition, I'm a nationalist. After all, when I voted to leave the EU, I did so because I wanted Britain to be an independent nation once again and have the power and ability to control our own affairs. I refuse to see how this is a bad thing, but if you were glancing at the recent media hit pieces about Poland, you'd be forgiven for thinking that nationalist equals Nazi, or fascist, or white supremacist. The word has been grouped into the same category, and the implied meaning has become the same. Check out this idiot from The Guardian. This weekend's march in Poland proves the far right isn't going away without a fight. Emmanuel Macron's victory convinced centrists that fascism had been turned back, but the 60,000 demonstrating in Warsaw shows how wrong they were. Now you see this number a lot in all of these articles, 60,000 demonstrators. I've heard from a lot of people, a lot of Polish people, who say that the number was far higher than that, but I guess the media are just trying to downplay just how big this movement has become. And already, before the article even begins, this is just a headline, already we have far-right and fascism. Two nice little buzzwords just thrown in there. It gets worse though, believe me. My friend was late for a Sunday brunch in Berlin, so I decided to wander the streets of Neukölln, hope I'm saying that right, googling sites of historic interest. After a few minutes, I wish I hadn't. Although 40% of its population are migrants, mainly from Turkey, Neukölln is gentrifying fast. The cobbled streets bordering the old Tempelhof airfield are buzzing with upmarket cafes, interior design stores, and the retro bicycles of the middle class. I'm confused. Does this guy have a problem with the middle class? I don't know. It just seems like he's saying this in a very snarky way. And I'm sorry, but 40% of the population being migrants is just not a good thing. It's not a good thing. But this is the place where, on the 11th of November 1926, Joseph Goebbels began the Nazi takeover of Berlin. As a gesture of intent, he led 300 of the party's brown-shirt stormtroopers into what was then a stronghold of the left. 4 seriously injured, 4 slightly hurt, but were on the march, recorded the future war criminal in his diary. Just a gentle reminder, this article is about the march in Poland this weekend, so we're just going to have to, before we get to that, we're going to talk about Joseph Goebbels and the Nazis, just to paint a picture for you. Amid the mix of halal meat stores and veggie cafes, I don't sense tension. There is a strong community organisation here, supported by the city's left-led government. Almost every lamppost has an Antifa sticker on it, and there's a liberal, multicultural vibe. But what's happening here dramatises the dangers facing Europe. Can I just say for a second, how is it a good thing that every lamppost has an Antifa sticker on? This guy is obviously supportive of Antifa and a liberal, multicultural vibe. This is the point we're at now in The Guardian where, Antifa are the good guys, the real good guys. Listen, I'm not going to get sidetracked with Antifa, but you're getting a picture of what this guy thinks, aren't you? Here's the next paragraph, and brace yourselves. In Poland this weekend, 60,000 neo-Nazis staged a march celebrating the country's independence, chanting refugees out and carrying banners calling for an Islamic Holocaust. Now, let me just read that bit again for you. In Poland this weekend, 60,000 neo-Nazis staged a march. This is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in The Guardian, and that is saying something. Apart from the statement being obviously untrue, the writer says it without any remorse, without any concern of being reprimanded, and it's a comment made so flippantly that it really shows how far the media have fallen and the depths they're willing to dive to in order to smear those who they deem to be their enemies. The march was attended by tens of thousands of normal people. Men, women, children, families, old, young, but no, they're neo-Nazis. That's all they are, neo-Nazis. They're just awful, awful people. Evil people, in fact, and everyone should recognise Poland as being the worst place on the planet. I can't believe that he just blurted this out. They thought it would be a good thing for him to write. But obviously his mind is so warped that he actually believes this to be true. 60,000 neo-Nazis. Really? May I ask for proof, sir? Are you going to provide any? Unbelievable. Let's read some of the rest he has to say. This is happening when Europe's economy is growing faster than at any time since the 2008 crisis. Poland's unemployment rate is 5.3%, a record low. In the late 1920s, fascism was driven by economic desperation. In Poland, it is being driven by a white Christian supremacist ideology that political and social elites seem unwilling to challenge. Its core message is no more social change. Well, is it a Christian supremacist ideology if Polish people are proud of their Christian heritage? That's just a question for you. I mean, the Polish people recognise and they openly say, and they openly praise the fact that their country has a Christian heritage. And by the way, the entirety of Europe has a Christian heritage. Christianity throughout Europe has helped shape and build Europe, and I can say that without being a Christian. Without believing in God, I can say that and I can admit that. That doesn't mean I want to live in a Christian theocracy, but it's just the acknowledgement of a fact. And this message about social change, well, here's the thing. I think we can all agree that social change is a natural thing. The problem in Europe in recent years is it's been forced social change. It hasn't been natural. It's been forced upon the people when they don't want it. I'm sure the Polish people would be more than open for social change to occur in their nation if it was natural. The assumption in the political mainstream is that if you police the borders demonstratively, acknowledging people's fears about immigration, maintain economic growth and throw development aid at North Africa, eventually the tensions driving neo-fascism will go away. But modern fascism is no longer a response to single events. It is, as the outpourings of people such as Tommy Robinson repeatedly remind us, about Islam and white identity. There's our first Tommy Robinson name drop there. You've got to get him in somehow, don't you? Who's next? Katie Hopkins? Come on, let's just roll them all out. Nigel Farage, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump. Come on, let's just name them all. Let's get it over with. Tommy Robinson isn't a white nationalist. He's certainly not a white supremacist, but of course The Guardian wants to muddy the waters here and make you think that he is. Tommy Robinson is the most lied about man in Britain. By a long, long way. It is about the headscarf, the mosque and the Quran that the fascists marching through Warsaw care about, not the economic strain brought by refugees. You know what, I think they have a right to be concerned about the mosques and the Quran, mate. You say that as if it's not something to be concerned about when it is. It's probably one of the biggest issues facing modern Europe today. Poland has dealt with a grand total of 1,474 asylum claims this year, just 18 of them from Syria, the rest mostly from white Christian Russia and Ukraine. And you know what, mate? What's your big problem with that? Because if we look at this map, and this map has been shared all over the place, but here's a map of Europe. The dots represent Islamic terrorist attacks. Notice which country has no dots in it. Oh yeah, that's Poland. I wonder why. It couldn't possibly be because they restrict their immigration so tightly that their people don't want Islamic immigration in their country because they can see what is going on all around them. I will not criticise those who try to stop fascists marching. It is a legitimate tactic given the danger. But the 2,000-strong Antifa mobilisation in Warsaw, up against 60,000 people enjoying the moral support of the government and the media, suggests we are not going to stop them that way this time. Again, more open support for Antifa. That violent adolescent group of idiots, Antifa. This time around, the forces are different. Labour movements are weaker and democratic constitutions stronger. The media is often in the hands of xenophobic billionaires. Really? While many state TV stations are paralysed by or even complicit in the racist narrative. Probably the biggest difference is the high level of theory and consciousness you find in the online groups of the new far right. It is an international movement fueled by dollars and airtime both from the pro-Trump right and, in some cases, by Russian intelligence. Oh, the Russians. Here we go, we're just listing off all these checkpoints, aren't we? All these Guardian talking points. Tommy Robinson, far right, fascist, neo-Nazis. The Russians. Yeah, everything's the Russians' fault. Russia's behind everything. Yeah, you're right. Its breakthrough moments will not take place through street fights as in the 30s, but through symbiosis with sections of the mainstream nationalist conservative right. And this is happening in the Austrian coalition talks, in Poland, in Hungary, and of course in the US, where the entire narrative of the pro-Trump news media feeds the paranoia of the far right. This guy clearly has a problem with people of nations voting for things that they feel would best serve their interests. So the Austrian election, for example, the people voted for Sebastian Kurz because they agreed with him. In Poland, their government was democratically elected as well. In Hungary, the same thing. So what is the problem here? Why are all of these things happening, mate? Is it because the media is brainwashing people, as you say? Is it Russian intelligence? Or could it possibly be, that Europe, the European Union and all of those forces are seen as an active threat by people against their nations, their cultures, their traditions and their identity? What could it possibly be? That's just one example of the unbelievable nonsense that has been written about this event, and I could read you a ton of other articles that express the same sentiments, but it would take me all day. I'll post the links in the description down below if you want to spend your weekend in a constant state of facepalm. But let me show you a few little things though. This one is my favourite. Did you see that Poland went all neo-Nazi on us last night? Interesting picture, isn't it? I don't know about you, but I can't really see any neo-Nazis in that picture. No, I see men and women holding up the Polish flags in the air and, yeah, that's it. Newsweek, in their infinite wisdom, are trying to conflate the image of the Polish national flag with Nazism. Hardly subtle, is it? And it's amazing to me that the media really think it's realistic to paint Poland, a country that was invaded and occupied by the Nazis, as somehow being the home of the Fourth Reich. I mean, as if the Polish people, who also long suffered under the iron grip of communism, are now longing to enact some kind of authoritarian rule over themselves. It simply doesn't add up. It's complete bullshit. But congratulations, Newsweek. Well done. You've knocked this one out of the park. Fantastic. I'm going to save this to my computer and look at it and have a little chuckle every now and then. Fantastic work. Here's some more identical pieces from various news sources. Thousands of nationalist and fascist demonstrators have taken part in a march in Poland in what is believed to have been one of the largest far-right gatherings in the world. Oh god. So, in one sentence, we have nationalist and fascist put right next to each other, so basically they're the same thing. And far-right at the very end of it. So that's just one sentence, and you got three nice little trigger words in there. Astounding work. The Warsaw demonstration was organised by far-right groups as Poles celebrated their country's Independence Day, with the turnout dwarfing that of previous years. Well, if the turnout dwarfed that of previous years, isn't that a nice little signal that things in Europe might not be going the way you want them to? That people in Europe are actually fighting back? It attracted far-right and nationalist campaigners from elsewhere in Europe, including the UK's Tommy Robinson, there he is again, alongside protesters from Sweden, Germany and Slovakia. So in this tiny little extract from an article, we have nationalist and fascist, far-right several times, and at the bottom there, far-right again, and nationalist campaigners. Tommy Robinson mentioned the people who work for these newspapers, do they have to use these words a certain amount of times and check them off, otherwise they don't get paid or something? What is going on here? Amazing. Tens of thousands of nationalist demonstrators marched through Warsaw at the weekend to mark Poland's Independence Day, throwing red smoke bombs and carrying banners with slogans such as "White Europe of Brotherly Nations." Police estimated 60,000 people took part in Saturday's event in what experts say was one of the biggest gatherings of far-right activists in Europe in recent years. Now, this is from a different news outlet, but it's written almost identically to the previous one. It's scary how similar they are. Tens of thousands of nationalists marched in a demonstration organised by far-right groups in Warsaw as Poles celebrated their country's Independence Day. The far-right march was one of many events marking Poland's rebirth as a nation in 1918 after being wiped off the map for 123 years. Again, I mean, do I really have to say it? Nationalists, far-right groups. Some participants marched under the slogan, "We want God," words from an old Polish religious song that the US President Donald Trump quoted during a visit to Warsaw earlier this year. Oh God, how terrifying. The speakers encouraged attendants to stand against liberals and defending Christian values. Mention Donald Trump, you gotta mention Trump. You know, he visited Poland, so, this is all probably organised by him. And Steve Bannon. Israel expresses concern about racist march in Poland. Israeli Foreign Ministry spokesman Emmanuel Nashon, am I saying that right, called the event a dangerous march of extreme and racist elements. In a statement to the Associated Press, he also said, "We hope that Polish authorities will act against the organisers. History teaches us that the expressions of racist hate must be dealt with swiftly and decisively." Excuse me, Israel, but I don't see what business it is of yours to get involved in Poland's Independence Day celebrations, eh? If there were a handful of people there who expressed anti-Jew remarks, surely that doesn't reflect on the entire crowd. But you're always ready to pounce on this stuff, aren't you? Always. I think you should worry about your own affairs. You've got quite a lot on your plate right now. I don't want to make this video a bloody marathon because I seriously, I could go on and on showing you these articles, but you have a look for yourselves if you can be bothered. And by the way, I'm not saying that everyone at this march was an angel. I'm sure there were some undesirable characters among the crowd, but quite frankly, that comes with the territory. You're going to find that at basically every political rally, whether it's the left or the right. The fact is, the vast majority of people celebrating this day were normal Polish people who were simply proud of their country and wanted to demonstrate that. You know, the left always lecture us about not painting with broad brushes, as they say, but they have absolutely no problem whatsoever with doing exactly that to groups who threaten their worldview. And that's really what this is about. The establishment media see this rise of nationalism as a threat to them. They see it as a threat to their brand of politics, they see it as a threat to their favourite institutions such as the EU, and they're scared. And yeah, they should be scared, because this rising consciousness is absolutely a threat to them. It is absolutely a signifier of a change in the wind. This ever-growing movement will change Europe. As a Brit, I have to say I'm insanely jealous of the Polish people right now. We in this country have given up. We've gone too far. We'll never see demonstrations like that on our streets, unless our political system is shaken by someone or a new party that inspires the many disillusioned people that live here. But the likelihood of that is small, to say the least. Poland is on the right track, and they must have the confidence and conviction to continue down this path. They also, if I may be so bold, need to leave the European Union, along with Hungary and the other Central and Eastern European nations that are banding together. These countries have been threatened and derided for a long time now. Their people have lived through suffocating political regimes and as a result have become stronger than us in the West. They understand the threats that face our continent because they've seen them all before. And while they're fighting to preserve their culture and identity, we in Britain are debating how young we can start kids on gender transitioning treatment. I mean, our priorities are completely wrong, backward and regressive. We should be looking at Poland for inspiration, and we should be following their example. If Europe is to be saved, it will be the East that will save it. Just like they did at the gates of Vienna in 1683. Oh, what short memories we have. Thank you all very, very much for watching once again. Gentle reminder, the print version of the Iconoclast magazine goes off sale at midnight on Sunday. The link is down below if you want to order a copy before then. After that time, they will be printed and sent off to you in good time. I want to thank everyone who supports this channel, either just by watching and subscribing or by, financial means. You guys are fantastic. I really couldn't do this without you. I'd like to thank my hatrons for being so hateful that they decided to pledge a monthly fee to me. You hateful, hateful, hateful bigots. I'd also like to thank all of my patrons who, like I always say, are the complete opposite of my hatrons. They are beautiful, righteous beings who would never put a foot wrong in life. They're the sort of people who'd cry if they stood on a bug accidentally, they're really nice-hearted people. Thank you to every single one of you. Okay everyone, have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon.